614 Startups Nation, welcome back to another episode of the 614 Startups Podcast. I am your host, Elio Harmon, and today I am losing my mind. This is a Smalltown USA edition of the podcast. I am in Bellefontaine on the recommendation of Bellefontaine's own Will Zell, and I'm here sitting down with my man Jason Duff of Small Nation.
Hey, welcome.
Dude, I've been looking forward to this. It's been on the calendar. Your man Zach set this up about 2 months ago. It was originally supposed to be on the 7th. We had to push it back to the 21st. But we're here and we're excited to talk to you.
Welcome to Bellefontaine.
Awesome. So, I live in Columbus. And in the startup world, we are the so-called small fish in Columbus. Most of the tech investment goes out west, Silicon Valley, Seattle, and out east, New York and Boston, and in the Midwest, maybe Chicago. But Columbus is emerging. And one of the things I don't want to do with this podcast, of course, I want to focus on my city. I love my city, and I want to see my city grow. But right outside of 270, there are awesome things happening with entrepreneurial communities that still touch Columbus that I want to explore. And Will made the recommendation. He said, if you want to start, the best place to start is Bellefontaine. So we're starting with you. He speaks so highly of you that I had to get you on the podcast to chat with you.
Well, first off, this is awesome that you guys are in town today. I know we started out this early morning, but you've had your breakfast, which is a local, awesome new place we have in town called the Marketplace Bistro. And you also we're actually working in right now the Loft Above Native Coffee. And if you would have come here before, like our town did not have that food and coffee culture, but now we do. And so you're in the living laboratory of seeing how a small town started. It was dead, and in the last over 7 years, it's now coming alive. And a lot of it is because of those reasons. The other thing is Bellefontaine, you're actually at the peak of Ohio, the highest point in elevation in all of the state. So I like to think that when the glaciers came through here millions of years ago, that there was some purpose and intent with how this place was formed. And through innovation and the ups and downs of business and the economy, there's great things happening here again.
Awesome. So at the top of every show, we talk about the personal. We want the audience to get to know the guest. Start wherever you would like about your personal side.
Yeah.
Are you from Bellefontaine originally? And just come and bring us forward to where we are today.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a town, Huntsville, Ohio, a town of 400 people. It had one stoplight, one gas station, and a little trolley on State Route 117 that we affectionately refer to as our town restaurant, called the Town Trolley. And I think that experience of being in the small town, as I learned, relationships and getting to know people is really important. Both of my parents and grandparents were small business owners. So at a very young age, I had the chance, or maybe didn't have the chance, they dragged me with them. I worked with them. My father had businesses and grandfather had businesses in construction materials. So we sold concrete, lumber, and stone. And my mom owned a bookstore and a Hallmark store. So I learned the importance of display and picking great retail products and the magic of working the retail rush in the holiday season. So I like to say that part of what has been my entrepreneurial journey is learning and being around mentors and being around a family that saw their way to give back or their way to serve the community was starting and founding businesses.
Okay, so you said it was in Huntsville?
Yeah, Huntsville,
okay.
Yeah.
So when did your family move, or when did you move to Bellefontaine?
Yeah, so my mom's store, her bookstore was here in town. Mm-hmm. So growing up, I could not only work in her store, but I got to know a lot of the other small businesses that were up and down the streets that lined Main Street and Bellefontaine and Columbus Avenue, which are kind of like the two busy streets where the downtown is. And I could share with you that when I was 13 years old, the man that owned the men's clothing store here in town, Jim Greer of Huber Buckenroth, he taught me how to tie a tie. And that experience of being with someone that kind of helped me learn about how to dress, the way to connect with people, the way to shake someone's hand, the way to look, like that lesson happened here on Main Street. And if you went a few doors down and around the corner, that is where Family Pharmacy was. And that is where, if I was sick, I always knew the pharmacists that were going to greet me and provide that medical care and that support to not only myself and my family. And I think that is the quintessential small town experience, is it's those entrepreneurs and leaders that took the courage to open up a business, but it's then that connection, that experience that they provided for the people that were in this community. And they also prospered. I mean, the goal was to make money so that they could provide for their families, for their future, invest in their business. And I benefited from that living in a place like this.
Awesome. So the Hollywood narrative, at least in the movies that I've seen, is you grow up in a small town and you can't wait to leave.
Yeah.
But the way you describe it is the memories that shaped you into the person you are is because of this town. And so did you have a moment where you left and came back, or have you always been here? Has the plan always been to stay in Bellefontaine?
I think for many young people, the goal is to be better and to do better. And I think a lot of people, there is a narrative out there that is, if you go to a big city, if you move away, you have a better chance and better opportunity. So for me, I did leave my town for a period of time. I went to Ohio Northern University, and while I was gone getting a college education, a lot of things changed at home. So the pharmacy that I mentioned, the big box pharmacy, the big three, all three of them came into our town with a period of a year and bought all the independents up. So the independent pharmacies that I knew and loved closed, and then the corporate pharmacies came to town. The other thing that kind of impacted our community even prior to that was the first Walmart that ever came to Ohio, located in Bellefontaine, Ohio.
Wow.
1987, 88, that's when Walmart came to town. And like a lot of other towns, they built strip centers outside of the downtown central business district. And that was when a lot of Main Street started to change. But when I was gone, the big box pharmacies came to town. The men's clothing store that I mentioned closed. And a lot of business owners started to retire, and there weren't those next generation of leaders and people to come in to occupy and start up and to maintain those businesses, but to start up new businesses. So coming back to town, I got my real estate license, and I had read a book that meant a lot to me. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. And that was when that mind shift happened, where maybe I should learn about real estate and how to make money work for me instead of just working a job to make money. I figured out at that time when I came back, the economic crisis was in full swing, and I was a terrible residential realtor. I put out a lot of signs, was not getting a lot of calls, but that education of learning about real estate really inspired me to say, well, what about all these empty buildings in our downtown? And it took that courage to buy that first building when everyone said that most of those buildings should be taken down. To then think, well, what can we do to bring a business to town? And I think there's a lot of people all around the country that have the same question about those empty buildings they drive by every day, saying, what could go here? What are the possibilities?
So, do you remember when you called on a listing? What was your pitch? How'd you get listings? You said you were you described yourself as a terrible. I'm interested to know. Do you remember what your pitch was when you called to get the listing?
Well, in the beginning, I think it's knocking on doors and hearing a lot of people say no. But one of my mentors taught me is that no is just a delayed version of yes. You just have to keep asking the question other ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a sales guy, and so that's what I tell myself, not to get depressed.
You can't get depressed, but the thing about it is, if you really, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this podcast right now, and the thing that most successful people do not say enough is how lonely and difficult and scary it is to kind of step out on your own. And that's true in sales. It's also true in being a leader. It's true in being an entrepreneur, that most people will say no to you throughout your entire life. And even some of the most intimate and important relationships in your life, it could be your family, it could be, your mentors, will say, you're probably going to fail. You're probably not going to be successful. But I think there is a mindset that we have to develop, and we have to remind people that are out there, is that if you continue to work hard and you believe in your vision and your ideas, you can do it.
Well, I think you make a very important point, because even though you didn't find success in one aspect of real estate, you had the wherewithal, which is the entrepreneurial mind, to see the real estate market from a different direction, right? So you start to look at Bellefontaine and you start to see that, hey, there's opportunity here. All these buildings are boarded up. So did you always know that you were going to be in business for yourself, or did the idea of starting your own business kind of arise to you at that point? When did the startup or entrepreneurial bug really bite you?
I think it started pretty young, probably on the playground, when I learned that I could go to a big store like Sam's Club and buy candy bars in bulk and put them in my backpack and sell them to my friends. Like, for me, it was maybe starting with school projects of selling things, and the aspect of seeing pride come when I did sell something and it benefited someone else, but also benefited me. But I think, going in the time machine 20 years further, it was similar process of saying, I see something that has extreme potential. It's very much undervalued, but it's going to take a lot of creativity, hard work, and ambition to help it achieve that potential. And it was finding other people that resonated with that vision, that said, I see that vision too, and I want to go with you to accomplish that.
Being a realtor and then being a real estate investor, it's
different world.
It is a completely different world. And so once you identify this opportunity, what's the process of turning this idea into an actual business?
Well, I think it's three things. I think you have to first identify assets that you see potential in. And in the business world, that can be a lot of different things. It could be an idea related to intellectual property. It could be a hard asset like a piece of real estate, or it could be actually the creation of some type of business entity. But you also need people, and when it comes to people, you need people that actually have the vision to execute on that idea. Sometimes you may not even be able to afford to pay people. It's going to start working together. Maybe you do a test project to see if that initial idea is successful. And the third is you will need resources. And I think that's probably the hardest for a lot of people, is they maybe have a really good idea. They have people around that idea that want to help execute it, but they don't have financial resources or the money needed to execute on those ideas. What I love about Bellefontaine is things got so bad that most of the building owners in our town would rather hand the keys to their building instead of trying to pay for the real estate taxes, the insurance, and the upkeep on those structures. So the barrier to entry for an entrepreneur, one of the first things many businesses need, is we need a home or a piece of real estate to incubate and test our idea out. So a lot of the buildings in our town could be purchased for $1. That was the barrier to entry, $1. So once someone had a building, then this became a great testing ground. If you were innovative and you're willing to work hard, let's build and test the business out here. Because we already know about Ohio in general and Columbus in general. It is the test market for the world, okay? I mean, there's reasons why many of the retail stores like Wexner's Limited and Bath and Body Works, and we could go on, or Wendy's and many of the fast food and restaurants chose Columbus, Ohio, is that we had the demographics that represent the world. So Bellefontaine is really, within 45 minutes of the Columbus metro area. We're right up the road, and so the cost and the barrier to entry to do something here is even greater if you're an innovator, doer, and entrepreneur. And that's what I think we started to see 6 years ago as the opportunity, but we had to build it, and now they're starting to come.
Right. So you make the leap, right? And I'm sure nerves are there.
Sleepless nights, tears. I mean, more than nerves, like panic. If you've not felt anxiety, you're probably not doing it right. But it was, I think, finding enough people that believed with me and said, I got your back, and we're going in this together. And I think it also took connecting with government. I mean, finding people within the city that resonated with this vision. And I will share, in the beginning, remember, I was not from Bellefontaine. I was from the neighboring community. Think the high school sport rivalry. I was from Indian Lake. So again, coming in kind of from the outside, some people did not want me here. And that hurt. My vision and my belief, I wanted to make this town better. But then the people that mattered started coming out. And it was the comments like, wow, now that facade's been redone and those new windows are put in, and wow, the lights are on in that building. Like, it was a shift from a psychology standpoint. Like, we're seeing hope again. There's that flicker of energy and passion that's coming back to this town. I remember when I had one lady come up to me. This has been probably a few years ago, and she said, thank you for allowing me to fall in love with my town again. And that was like, we're doing something that's right.
Wow.
We're doing something that is significant. And that was the fuel. That was the fuel that says, there are these sparks of people, of legacy, of heritage, of pride that exist in these small towns peppered throughout the Midwest, that's ready to come alive again.
Wow. And sometimes you can get into business for any number of reasons. But I don't think as business owners we talk enough about those little interactions that you might have with your customer or a vendor, where they express to you how much your business or your business relationship really means to them. So I think it's important that you shared that. So what was your first purchase? And what were you thinking about as you were making that first purchase? Like you said, you evaluated a lot of things, the value of the asset, the location, I'm sure. But what was your first purchase, and what was that process of going from a building that was boarded up to one that you could actually have tenants in?
Our first purchase, there was a department store that was in our town for 40 years that was called Almonds. And I remember probably my first pair of shoes ever came from Almonds. When we had to get dressed up for church to go to Easter Sunday, that's where you bought clothes. And as with a lot of retail stores, we lost Almonds 15 years ago. So the building sat vacant, and it went up for a tax foreclosure sale. And I was either brilliant or dumb enough, depending, there's luck that played into this. I went to the sale and basically purchased it for what back taxes were owed on it. The property was located right across from our historic courthouse on Main Street. Had this awesome, 3-story brick building, at least 18,000 square feet. So it was big, and it was cool, and it was old. Now, what people said, wow, that's a terrible investment because there's no parking. Wow, that's a terrible investment because it needs a new roof. But we had seen and studied what was happening in other larger metropolitan markets. I mean, if you go back in a time machine and look at one of the hottest real estate markets in Columbus 25 years ago, it was the Victorian Village in the Short North. And really studying that model by bringing in artists, creators, and doers, that was when the shift happened, the energy changed. And some of the businesses that we place on the highest pedestal in the startup community in Columbus incubated in that area. So one of my secrets is I go to larger cities and study that history, that trend, and I knew that if we recruited a restaurant to the center of our town, that would be and could be a pinnacle for getting people to come back to the area. I had heard of this amazing entrepreneur and group of pizza restaurants that were in small towns near kind of Kenton, Ohio, and then Rushsylvania, Ohio, so kind of within our region. But Michael Shepard, that owned Michael Angelo's Pizza, he made this incredible product that people would stand an hour in line to get. And so I drove up there. I wanted to meet him. I shook his hand. I ate his pizza. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I asked him one question. I said, would you consider opening up a third location? And do you know what he said to me? No. It goes back to that advice that you and I were talking about earlier, is that I just didn't give up when I heard my first no. I went back again. I went back a third time. The third time I was there, I had pictures with me. And I showed him these tin ceilings in this building. I showed him that there's 14,000 cars a day that pass by this real estate. And I was persistent enough. I said, can I have 15 minutes of your time to give you a tour? He luckily said yes. And that's when he opened up 600 downtown. And going over the last 6 years, that restaurant has been the pinnacle for bringing tourism, traffic, interest, buzz, because the pizza is that good. It's so good, they've been on the Discovery Channel. Good Morning America. 5 months ago, the owner now today of 600, Brittany Saxton, she was on the Food Network show Guy's Grocery Games. She earned second place out of 4 international pizza chefs. That young woman and young leader is in our town, executing on a vision in a building and driving force of bringing so many other things to our community. So that was the beginning of creating local food, creating a product that people will drive an hour to experience. And then we set our sights out for other buildings in our town and other opportunities to enhance the experience of visiting downtown Bellefontaine.
That's terrific, and that's an awesome story. I think it's important to point out that you didn't just go in because it was a good deal. You also had a plan, right? You purchased the building with a plan, and the plan was to try to attract restaurants. And as we were walking the town to go over and get breakfast, that was one of the things you kept stressing. You said you really and truly believed that if you could get restaurants to come, everything else would follow. Was that just instinctual? Did you study it? Because it seems to have worked pretty well.
So I think we live in a very tech-driven world. I'm not going to lie, I spend a lot of time on social media and the internet. And what I think we, at a human level, what we're craving is interaction. And so I think we are focusing more on creating those places where people can convene, have conversations, connect, and I think food is one of those things. There's nothing more comfortable than sitting around a table with a group of your friends and eating an awesome pizza and hearing the story of why that menu item is significant or special, or hearing about that one of the pizzas at 600, the Montana, which is a white pizza, grilled chicken, bacon, mozzarella, and they take potato chips that are made in Urbana, Ohio, put them on top, and bake it at 600 degrees.
That's my kind of pizza.
How does that sound, right?
That sounds awesome.
So, that's the thing. We have to be significant. It has to be interesting. It has to have a story. And I think if you walk up and down our streets and connect with our entrepreneurs here, they have those kind of businesses. People will drive an hour to say, let's walk around and see what this town has to offer. And my hope is, in building our company and what we're doing, is really working about telling the story of all of these small towns and inspiring entrepreneurs, businesses, investors to bring those kinds of experiences back to their town.
Mm-hmm. And so as we were walking, what I immediately noticed is that Small Nation is having an impact. Not everywhere, but as we walk past the businesses that were open and business owners, everybody would say hi to you, and you would say hi to everybody. It's like you are part of this community. I think what you're doing is combining a lot of different functions that maybe some companies, in order to scale, might just specialize. For example, they just develop the building, they don't want to be the landlord, they outsource that to somebody else, and they move on to the next project. Is it right to say, or maybe you can shine some light on this, is that Small Nation is going to work with the entrepreneur throughout the process. You're going to buy the building, but you might also stay on as the landlord, and if they need some consulting work, you'll do that for them. If they need some investment to help them, you'll point them in the right direction. It sounds like you're building a value-added service, and you're not just purchasing real estate and developing it. Is that right? Is that what you see?
You have to walk the streets of those communities. You have to engage and know the dreams, passions, fears of the businesses that are there, and you have to give them tools and resources. So I think what our hope and vision is to show them some case studies and examples of what we have attempted and accomplished here. That might be, what does it take to open up an incredible hair salon? What does it take to build an antiques district in your town with thriving specialty, local, vintage, antique type stores? What does it take to bring loft apartments to the vacant upper floor buildings in your town and getting really great rents, but even more importantly, getting incredible people living in those spaces that are walking the streets, shopping, getting involved in your town? And I think those engines are something that we hope to have the case studies, the examples, the experience. Now, with experience, we can also share what has not worked. And I think there's a lot of amazing lessons there. But it's giving people a model, giving people a game plan and a list of examples so they can be successful too.
What is your vision for Small Nation?
Well, I'm pretty proud that I started, like a lot of small businesses, is you hire your first employee. And I ended up hiring some friends from college that I met. And then I started reaching out throughout Ohio, meeting other people from doing great things in smaller towns that felt unappreciated or underappreciated. And I said, why don't you come and take the tour here? And those employees have went through a path of earning opportunities to now become business owners. And I'm hopeful on your podcast you'll be able to hear from some of those employees that started working with me and saw enough and believed enough in the vision here. They're like, well, I have an idea and I want to start a business too. And some of our most successful businesses in town are because of people that went through that path. Where does it go from here? Well, our hope is that some of these businesses are scalable and transferable. And I think we hope to become the coaches, the teachers, the leaders that can provide vision for other towns that are just like ours, and be able to travel there and meet with economic development professionals, meet with the investors in that community, and meet with people that have good ideas. And I think by pulling some of those resources together, we can have an incredible impact on a town. There's no lie that economic development is changing right now. It's not about how many dirt to shovel industrial park spaces you have available or the electric and the gas infrastructure. It's actually what kind of talent do you have wanting to stay in that town, and how are you keeping young people there engaged and wanting to live in your communities and have families in your communities. So I really ask the question of a lot of leaders and economic development professionals: how many craft beer bars are in your town? How many coffee shops? How many loft apartments? Because if you don't have those things, you're going to have a difficult time keeping young people wanting to stay and live in a place like where they were from.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to open it up for a broader kind of societal question. I'm currently listening to J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy. Have you heard of it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he describes small town America and what's happened over time in those smaller communities. And, to hear a story of Bellefontaine, maybe Bellefontaine doesn't exactly meet the criteria of all the issues that he attempts to address in that book, but I think it's, for the longest time, a flyover country, as they describe it, has been ignored for too long. A lot of people listen to this podcast, and I really want to encourage them to begin to look at Smalltown USA as places not of despair, but places of opportunity. Do you have anything to add to that idea of what's going on in Smalltown USA and how maybe people can help with economic development going forward?
I found that for people that are creative, for people that want to make an impact, there's some businesses and industries that have to die before the rebirth can happen. And I know that there have been parts of the country that have been hurting for some time. There's parts of the country and places like where I'm from and a lot of places throughout the Midwest that have felt like they are missing out or are being left out. What I think is happening, though, and what I see happening here, is that now people are seeing this a place of hope, they're seeing this a place of opportunity, and they're seeing this as a new frontier to institute new ideas, and at a pace that is probably more rapid than I've seen since the 2000s. Like, there's a lot of creative people that are saying, wow, I've got all this ambition and ideas, I have limited time, I would love to do what I'm doing in a bigger city, but I can get it done so much faster in a place like Bellefontaine because I can get to know the mayor, I can get to know the banker, I can actually get my sign put up in a day and a half versus if I was in a big city, it may take me months to get a sign put up if I'm ever even allowed to put a sign up. And so for us, like, I want to be that beacon of hope. I want to be able to connect with entrepreneurs and ask the question, what do you need to be successful? Because a lot of people, when I was starting out, there weren't enough people that were asking me that question. And I think why there is a lot of pain and there is a lot of challenges, this is exactly where I feel I am drawn to be. And I also think if you talk to the tribe of people that are turning this town around, they would also tell you the same. And we're branded together. We're in this together. And I think that also is a driving force for bringing good to this town.
You know, I walked around with you for maybe about 10 minutes or so. And my first reaction was, I gotta get my wife and daughter up here.
Please.
This is the perfect distance from Columbus where you can take a day trip and I don't want to say you're in another world, but you're experiencing something very unique to Bellefontaine. You guys are not trying to be anybody else except who you are. And there's so many places to go and take a day trip and really have a great family experience. What are some stops, must-stop places for families, or maybe even a guy's trip or a girl's trip, whatever the case may be, to get out and see in Bellefontaine?
Yeah, great question. We are really proud of some of our tourism destinations. So have you ever heard of Ohio Caverns before?
Yes, I have.
So America's most colorful caves. It's only 15 minutes away from here in West Liberty. And you can go down and see stalactites and stalagmites and take the tour and experience going 65 feet underground and seeing the most beautiful and colorful caverns. And then while you're down in West Liberty, you won't want to miss the castles. We actually have castles here in Ohio. Piat Castles and Macachief. They're incredible to explore. It's like you're in Europe, but you're literally here in Ohio. And then we have locally owned Marie's Candy, which if you love chocolate, it's the real deal, promise me. You gotta visit there. And then as you're heading up, we're really proud to have Ohio's largest winter park, and that's Mad River Mountain. So believe it or not, being the highest elevation in Ohio, you can ski here, you can tube, you can bring your snowboard down. And then 20 minutes away from here is Indian Lake, the second largest inland lake in Ohio. But what's right smack in the middle of all that is our little downtown. And I should say little but mighty because we have 22 specialty retail stores in walking distance. We have Ohio's #1 craft beer bar, the Brew Fountain. We have 600 downtown gourmet pizza. And in 2 weeks, we'll now have a Wits frozen custard. There's only like 27 of them in the country, and the product is made in the store fresh every day. Desserts don't stop there. City Sweets and Creamery, custom cakes, cookies, ice cream. So we want to be that date night experience. We want to be that day trip to say, let's experience what's great about America. And I think it's only going to get better. But what it comes to is that we are building our own startup community of people that are doers, creators, entrepreneurs that are willing to work hard. And we want to bring more people into that fold.
That's awesome, man. I think I'm going to get real chubby in Bellefontaine today. I'm going to eat some pizza with chips on it. I'm going to drink all the beer I can.
Yes.
Well, we're in, and you were alluding to this entrepreneurial community. We are in this beautiful space.
Yeah.
The renovation here is absolutely spectacular, and it's a co-working space.
Yeah.
So in addition to having retail space, you're doing co-working, you have your hands in a lot of things. Mm-hmm. If you could rewind back to when you first started and give yourself any advice, what would it be? Something to do differently, or do better, or consider? I
think it's important that you listen. And we really set out, and I think I needed to learn this even sooner, of just asking the question. So you may take a picture of a vacant building and ask the question, what do you want to see here? And what's amazing, if you post that on Facebook and engage your community, the comments start rolling in. Well, as a real estate entrepreneur, that became literally, we had community members that were tagging potential prospects and business owners. And that one Facebook post literally started turning into filling empty spaces left and right. And we've been using that strategy ever since, and it does not take a lot of money, does not take much time. The other thing is showing people renderings, so actually giving them some ideas. When you see a building that's all boarded up, vacant, empty, if you can work with an artist to actually create a rendering of what it could look like. It's amazing how when you align your mind and you align the vision of what you want to create, you get other people aligning that same vision, it happens. I mean, in the building that we're here now, there was not a coffee shop here 2 years ago, but we bought a bunch of used furniture of a failed business, and we staged it to look like one. So like when people are walking through, they start to think about, wow, like this could become something significant. And I think that has led to, once this part of town has access to coffee culture, that is what brings the new 24-hour gym. That's what brings now additional specialty retail stores. That then supports upper floor loft development. It's getting all the right people and places in the right spaces, but the community really is who guided us on what we needed the most. So ask questions and then listen.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the 614 Startups podcast. You dropped jewels throughout that thing. And more important than what you said is what I've seen you accomplish. I am so grateful for you hosting us, and I look forward to an amazing rest of the day. But my number one takeaway is this. We live in a time where hope is more important than ever. And we all struggle with, well, what can we do to make things better? I hate to give a capitalistic answer, but I think I have to in this situation. Get outside of your bubble. Travel to a town that you haven't heard of before and spend some money.
Love it.